On December 12, 2007, 47-year-old Nancy Bochicchio and her 7-year-old daughter Joey arrived at Town Center Mall in Boca Raton. They came here to shop for Christmas, just like any family would during the holiday season. Security footage captured them entering the mall at around 2:15 p.m., and less than an hour later, they were seen leaving through entrance 4 between Sears and Neiman Marcus. Security footage captured Nancy Bochicchio being held at gunpoint at a nearby ATM machine. It was also reported that the police received a phone call from Nancy's cell phone, which was never connected. Many question if the police could have done more, since it does seem suspicious to not receive an answer back from someone who dialed 911, even if it could have been taken as an accident. But this does show that the assailant was in a rush and made crucial mistakes. Despite the horrible nature of this crime, this does pose the question if it was premeditated. This is not a typical mistake for an experienced individual in this nature. This is not the first time these types of crimes have occurred at the Boca Raton Mall, leaving many to believe that these attacks could be from the same assailant. When the security guard found the vehicle, it was found running around midnight. When the police investigated, they were met with a gruesome crime scene. The bodies of Nancy and Joey Bochicchio were found in the vehicle, gagged, bound, and blindfolded. They were killed in cold blood at point-blank range. What seems odd about this situation is that the car was found running. No one noticed this or found it suspicious that a car was left running in the parking lot of the mall for several hours. In December, during the investigation of the initial leads, 2 persons of interest were identified. A photograph of David Goodman and a sketch of a suspect referred to only as Charles were made public. The Charles, who was later identified as Charles Jackson, was believed to have used Nancy Bochicchio's cell phone sometime after the homicide occurred. Meanwhile, Goodman was suspected of having come across Nancy's credit card. While no forensic evidence tied these cases together, investigators recognized similarities and initially suspected a connection between the murders. In June 2011, Michael Barrera emerged as a person of interest in Randy's case after a prison inmate reported that a gang had claimed responsibility for the murder, implicating Michael as the shooter. Furthermore, surveillance footage captured Randy's car being closely pursued by another vehicle that matched a description of a car belonging to one of Michael's relatives. Since there have been many similar cases throughout South Florida with the same nature of crimes, the attacker could have had time and experience to work on these major mistakes. A few months prior to the killing of Nancy and Joey Bochicchio, Randy Gorenberg was last seen on mall security footage before being found shot on the side of the road about 5 miles from the Boca Raton Mall. She was actually pushed out of the moving vehicle since it was believed that she was trying to escape. This again shows a mistake from the assailant, making his work rushed despite the chance of it being premeditated. Yes, the killer essentially stalked his victims from the parking lot, had the weapon, duct tape, and other items used for this attack, but he still managed to make mistakes. In June 2011, a few years after the murder of Nancy and Joey, there was a possible person of interest known as Michael Barrera. Michael was a fugitive, a part of MS-13. He was believed to be a person of interest since an inmate informed the police that Michael might have been the shooter, and a gang claimed to be responsible for the murder. But there was not enough evidence to prove this theory to be true. A few months prior, there was another mother, referred to as Jane Doe, and her son, who were held at gunpoint and forced to go to an ATM. Luckily, they managed to get rescued and make it home safe to their families. Something interesting about this case was the slight remorse the assailant had for the 2-year-old child. While Jane Doe was blindfolded, gagged, and bonded like Nancy and her daughter, the assailant did not restrain the child. Jane Doe and her son were driven back to the mall parking lot after some time of being driven around by the assailant, left at the scene, leaving Jane Doe in the car with the ability to drive herself to safety. This could also disprove the theory about Michael Barrera being the killer, since he showed remorse to Jane Doe and her son. This is not something typical for those a part of big gangs like MS-13. But it does seem strange that if this was the same killer, he seemed to become more remorseful towards the children while letting both Jane Doe and her son keep their life. If this was the same killer, what made him change from such a targeted, premeditated killer to now letting others live while being less cautious? Since there were various cases specifically targeting mothers in broad daylight at the Boca Raton Mall in 2007, this became a major news documentary covered by WPTV known as as the missing piece. Despite all the news and media shedding light to these cases, there still has been no one identified or any significant evidence brought to light in all these years, which is horrible for the families. Even though there have been similar cases and various murders, police have still not caught the killer. After all of these years, there has still been no one brought to justice and no answers for the family. There is still a $400,000 reward for anyone with any information or any leads in regards to this case.